Welcome back to Tech Updates. I'm glad you're here because today we're getting into one of the most destructive threats in cybersecurity right now, ransomware. And I want to be clear up front, this isn't your 2019 version of ransomware. What we're dealing with in 2026 is industrial scale extortion. These groups aren't just locking your files anymore. They're stealing your data, threatening your customers, hitting your website with denial of service attacks, and sometimes even calling your executives directly. Here's what we're covering today. What ransomware actually does under the hood, 3 real-world attack scenarios you need to understand, and then a full breakdown of the technical defenses that actually work. Let's get into it. At its core, ransomware is malware designed to deny you access to your own data and then demand payment to get it back. The classic method is encryption. Attackers encrypt your files using strong algorithms, typically AES 256 for the actual data and RSA 2048 or a CHA-20 hybrid to protect the encryption keys themselves. Without that key, your files are mathematically locked. But here's what's changed. Modern ransomware doesn't just encrypt, it exfiltrates first. Attackers steal your data before they lock it. That way, even if you restore from backups, they can still threaten to publish your files, notify your clients, or sell the data on the dark web. That's what's called double extortion. Some groups add a third layer, a DDoS attack on top of everything else, which is why we now talk about triple extortion. And then there's the ransomware as a service model, or RAS. Think of it like a criminal franchise. The developers build the malware and infrastructure, then rent it out to affiliates who run the actual attacks. The developers take a cut. It's lowered the barrier to entry dramatically, which is why attack volume keeps climbing. Attack scenario 1: credential theft to full domain takeover. Common in 2026 RAS groups like Killing and Akira. This is the most common playbook right now, and it starts surprisingly simply. Stolen credentials. Attackers grab login details from InfoStealer malware logs or a phishing campaign. They use those credentials to log into your VPN or RDP, and if you don't have multi-factor authentication enforced, they're just in, no alarm bells. It looks like a normal login. From there, they start enumerating your Active Directory. They're running PowerShell queries, mapping out who has elevated privileges, and figuring out how to get to domain admin. They'll use techniques like Kerberoasting, which exploits how Kerberos tickets work, or DC sync attacks to harvest password hashes directly from domain controllers. Once they have domain admin credentials, the clock is ticking. They target your backup servers first. Tools like Veeam are a prime target. They run a single command to delete all your volume shadow copies, which wipes your local recovery points in seconds. Then they push ransomware across your file shares over SMB and exfiltrate your data to cloud storage using a tool called rclone before dropping the ransom note. What should you be watching for? Unusual Kerberos ticket requests, specifically a spike in TGS requests. High volume SMB traffic hitting multiple servers in a short window. And especially vssadmin.exe spawning as a child process of anything. That last one is almost always malicious. Attack scenario 2: Hypervisor compromise. VMware ESXi vulnerabilities and cross-platform payloads. This one is scarier because of how much damage one entry point can cause. Attackers exploit an unpatched vulnerability in your edge infrastructure. VMware ESXi is a recurring target to get direct access to the hypervisor layer. From there, they're not dealing with one machine. They're dealing with every virtual machine running on that host. They deploy ransomware payloads that work across both Windows and Linux environments simultaneously. They encrypt the VM data stores directly, not the files inside the VMs, but the storage volumes themselves. They also manipulate your VM snapshots to block recovery. And while all this is happening, some groups will simultaneously launch a DDoS attack against your public-facing website to add pressure and distraction. Indicators to watch for: unusual commands in your ESXi shell that shouldn't be running interactively, disk I/O spiking across multiple data stores at the same time, and outbound connections to onion addresses, or Telegram bots, that's often how newer ransomware communicates with its command and control infrastructure for key negotiation. Attack Scenario 3: AI-assisted and data-only extortion, an emerging trend in 2026. This third scenario is newer, and honestly, it's the one that concerns me most from a detection standpoint. In these attacks, there's no encryption at all. The attacker's goal is purely exfiltration. They get in, often through AI-generated phishing that's eerily convincing, or even deepfake voice calls impersonating executives or IT staff, and then they quietly steal your most sensitive data. PII, health records, financial data, whatever has leverage. Then they threaten to publish it, sell it, or contact your clients directly. No ransomware deployed, no loud encryption event to trigger your alerts. Just a quiet, methodical data drain. And in hybrid versions of this attack, AI is helping the malware itself evade your endpoint detection tools, generating polymorphic code that looks different on every machine, or timing the exfiltration to happen during your lowest activity windows when your SOC team is least likely to catch it. Technical defenses, layered protection that actually works. Alright, let's talk about what you can actually do, and I want to be upfront. There's no single tool or product that stops ransomware. This is about layers. Each layer assumes the previous one might fail. Layer 1. Lockdown identity. Ransomware almost always starts with credential abuse, so your first line of defense is making stolen credentials worthless. Enforce phishing-resistant MFA everywhere, and I mean everywhere. RDP, VPN, cloud consoles, email, not SMS-based MFA, that's still phishable. Use FIDO2 hardware keys or passkeys. If an attacker has your password but can't pass the hardware key challenge, they're stopped cold. Beyond MFA, implement privileged access management (PAM) so that elevated credentials are only available when needed and for limited windows. Enable credential guard to protect from memory dumping. And kill legacy protocols. NTLM-v1 and SMB-v1 should be off. There's no good reason they should still be enabled in 2026. Layer 2. Endpoint and behavioral detection. Signature-based antivirus is not enough. You need an EDR or XDR platform with behavioral rules specific to ransomware precursors. The key behaviors to detect and block: Office applications spawning PowerShell or CMD processes, rapid file, rename, or delete activity, which is what encryption looks like at the file system level, and any process trying to call cryptographic APIs at high volume. A good EDR should be able to halt that automatically. Enable attack surface reduction rules in Microsoft Defender if you're in that ecosystem, specifically rules that block psexec and WMI-based execution, which are favorite lateral movement tools. On Linux systems, Falco or eBPF-based monitoring can catch anomalous system calls that indicate malicious activity. Layer 3. Immutable segmented backups. Your backups are the ultimate ransomware countermeasure, and they're also the first thing attackers try to destroy, so they need to be protected as seriously as any production system. Follow the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, 3 copies of your data across 2 different media types, with 1 copy offline or air-gapped using immutable storage, think warm, like S3 object lock, and 0 unverified backups. That last part matters. Test your restores quarterly. An untested backup is not a backup. And critically, segment your backup network. Your backup infrastructure should not be reachable from your general corporate network. Use dedicated VLANs or microsegmentation so that even a domain admin compromise can't reach your backup repositories directly. Layer 4. Network segmentation and zero trust. Ransomware's blast radius is determined almost entirely by how freely it can move laterally. Your goal is to make lateral movement expensive and noisy. Microsegmentation tools like Illumio, Guardicore, or Cisco Secure Workload let you enforce process-level and identity-aware policies between workloads. East-west traffic server to server within your data center should be as controlled as north-south traffic from the internet. Replace always-on VPNs with zero-trust network access, ZTNA. Every session should be verified independently. Just because someone authenticated this morning doesn't mean they should have persistent access to everything all day. Layer 5. Patch fast, especially edge devices. A huge percentage of ransomware intrusions in 2026 start with an unpatched vulnerability in an internet-facing device. VPN concentrators, firewalls, ESXi hosts. These are high-value targets because they often have elevated trust on the network once compromised. Automate patching for these devices where possible. Use CISA's Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, the KEV list, to prioritize. If you can't patch immediately, virtual patching through a WAF or IPS buys you time. Layer 6. Detection and rapid containment. Assume something will get through. Your detection and containment capability is what limits the damage. Set up SIEM or XDR correlation rules for the precursor behaviors. Who am I and netgroup commands running on servers that shouldn't be doing that. Unusual logon patterns, especially service accounts authenticating interactively. High outbound data volume to cloud storage providers like Mega or Azure Blob outside business hours. And configure your EDR to auto-quarantine on ransomware indicators. Speed matters here. The faster an infected endpoint is isolated, the smaller the blast radius. Layer 7. Incident response readiness. When ransomware hits, you don't want to be figuring out your response plan in the moment. That needs to exist and be tested before the incident. Maintain offline IR playbooks stored somewhere the attacker can't reach and delete. Run tabletop exercises that specifically simulate multi-extortion scenarios. Who calls legal? Who makes the public statement? Who decides whether to pay? These decisions should not be made under pressure for the first time. Here's the bottom line on ransomware in 2026. It's not just encryption anymore. It's industrialized extortion, and the tactics are getting nastier precisely because more victims are refusing to pay. So groups are adding DDoS, adding direct victim harassment, and shifting to data-only attacks that bypass your defenses entirely. The attack surface they prefer is identity. Credential abuse and edge device vulnerabilities are how most intrusions start, and once they're in, they move fast. The technical path forward is zero trust architecture, behavioral detection over signatures, immutable backups that are properly segmented, and layered controls that assume breach will happen and are built to contain it quickly when it does. Patch aggressively, harden identity, and please test your backups, because when ransomware hits, your preparation determines your downtime, not luck. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Tech Updates. Thank you so much for listening. If this was useful, and I hope it was, share it with a colleague or a friend who's working in IT or security.